The Unbroken Place podcast with Eddy Paul Thomas is a production of Say Something Studios.
What I'm hoping to do is I'm hoping to be a model and set the standard for how we build these tools moving forward. I don't want to be the only ethical AI tool in the world. I wish that all AI was ethical. But what I can say is that I've started this movement where we decolonize AI once and for all, so that those who are building these systems, they can follow my blueprint, which is all public and all live on social media and internet, all of the things, because we need more of it. Right. And so, again, as being Papa in the room, how am I showing up for my community? How am I modeling this to show people that it's possible?
Welcome back to The Unbroken Place, where it begins and ends with empathy. I'm your host, Eddy Paul Thomas, and this week it's on you. I blame it on you guys. I have looked at your messages, saw your DMs, and you've asked for this guy to come back and have a great conversation with us about AI, the explosion of AI, its ethical use. How do we utilize it in a way that preserves the dignity of the human being while also exploring the great ways in which it can make our lives easier? Of course, I'm talking about Christian Ortiz. He is back for the second time on The Broken Place. Christian is a decolonial technologist, the founder and CEO of Mod Atlas Media. But more importantly to this conversation, he is the developer of Justice AI, a tool that I've used for over a year now and have really, really been impressed with some of the work that it's doing. So without further ado, let's get into it. Christian, brother, I'm so glad you're here. We've talked before about everything that you were doing with Justice AI, and I'm glad you're back because we have had exchanges just talking about different ideas, what you're doing, what changes have been made to Justice AI, and how you're adapting to this rapidly changing environment. And quite frankly, a lot of the clients that I work with are wrapped up in some very, very deep AI focused questions. So I'm glad you're back, man. Thanks for jumping on.
Thanks so much for having me, brother. It's an absolute pleasure.
Yeah. Well, I will promise not to get too analytical, like some of the conversations we've had. I'll try and keep it at a certain level so people can follow. But I would love to just, I think what I'll do is probably ask you more of some of the questions that I'm hearing from clients. And I think I'll start with this one if it's not too deep of a kick here. When leaders say they are feeling torn between adopting AI and protecting their people, what do you think is actually underneath that tension?
When leaders say they feel tension between adopting AI and protecting their people, I honestly believe, so I look at everything through a power perspective. And part of being a decolonial social scientist is I have to look at our systems historically and realize what got us to where we are today.
Yeah.
And when I'm able to do that, I'm able to map out power structures and organizations that we don't really talk about, right, ever, and that we don't ever address. I don't believe that there is a tension. I think, to me, it's accountability theater, honestly, because the decision, like, think about it this way: the decision has already been made based on profit margins, shareholder value, etc., right? And leaders manufacture this torn narrative to perform care while literally executing harm. And whether it's intentional or not, this is what's happening. And these are the conversations that aren't being had. And so I think what's actually underneath of it all, which no one is talking about, is this racial capitalist logic, right? Where we maximize extraction from labor while minimizing responsibility for human consequences. And I know that's super deep, and it's It's not the answer that a lot of people want to hear, but this also gives an opportunity and a choice to leaders to really look within their organization, to look at their responsibility in AI adoption, and then they're given a choice on how to move forward responsibly.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, when I hear you say that, it's incredibly important to have open and honest conversations right now, because a lot of the moves that people are making, whether it be people already employed at a given organization or people seeking employment, there's a lot of fear in the way in which people are speaking. There's not a lot of confidence in their ability, whatever field they're in. There's a lot of just, is my position going to be replaced with AI, or are they going to bring in some sort of robot, or is it just becomes more and more of a less empowered position as an employee. So I appreciate your candor, and this is the place for it. So feel free to let it
Sure.
rip on that end. Um, I was thinking about what was the name of that company? Klarna, I think, is the name of it. It was a company that literally let a bunch of customer service people go, like over 1,000 customer service people go. And then after realizing that they had issues with some of the AI, it wasn't quite meeting their needs, and there's nuance to AI, and all of this, they're now in a place where they're trying to bring back 700 people. I think that was the number that was quoted in the article. They're trying to bring back 700 people. And so the question that comes to mind for me is, from your perspective, where does that line sit between responsible innovation and exploitation when it comes to AI replacing jobs?
Yeah, which I think is a fantastic question, and where I immediately go to is the stance that I take, where oppression of any kind it's not up for debate, right? So
Yeah,
there is no
yeah,
line when it comes to exploitation, right? So the immediate mind frame for leaders of any capacity in any industry they have to ask themselves the question, is there a line for them? Are there non-negotiables for them that they're willing to say, well, I'm okay replacing so and so with an AI system to save money? Do I actually care about my employees? Am I about that life, or am I just about profit? Am I, it's such an interesting question and conversation to have, because oftentimes nobody's willing to hold up the mirror and ask that question to leadership,
right,
right? Because
right,
that's what that is. That's a mirror that when you ask that question, uh, you're really putting leadership in a position that oftentimes they're not even prepared to answer. They're not prepared to address. So, to your question, I think the real question isn't where the line sits; it's who has the power. And if AI is being used to dispossess workers, cut wages, intensify surveillance, or transfer
yeah,
wealth upward, which is what we're seeing at mass now, that's exploitation, and that has to stop immediately.
yeah, yeah. That has been the norm in our country since Reagan's era, with the trickle down economics and all of that, and it's been a fierce fight to try and get that to change. But those individuals right now, because of the fact that they have so much wealth, are just kind of dictating terms in so many areas, that I don't want to say I see both sides, because I don't see both sides when it comes to the
Of
decisions
course.
that companies need to make. You have to consider the human first in
Yeah.
all scenarios for me.
Yeah.
Um, what are the needs of the individuals? What is the exchange? When I bring someone in and I tell them, I'm going to provide you with X because you're providing me with Y, the renege tends to be almost inhuman in some of these cases.
A
you
hundred
know
percent. And what I tend to look at too when I speak to organizations, leadership, even people starting small businesses where they are hiring employees, the small business for a small business, AI is everything right now today because it automates your posts and your marketing and all of these things, helps you with budgeting and
Yeah.
all of these and what have you. Um, but when we talk about responsible innovation, right, which is part of this question, I believe I'm in the firm. Like I'm at this balance where I'm not a AI doomer. I'm not a tech
Yeah.
bro, but I do
Yeah.
understand that if when you have an innovative tool like AI, you actually have the ability to build life-changing, sustainable processes to create something that we've never seen before. So it doesn't have to be, I hate AI, I love AI. It's how do we use AI responsibly to innovate responsibly to make some real change? I think that's where the question really is the heart of the question really lies.
Right. And I see that, and I think about just the history of our country and what we've done with technology in general.
Mm,
The use of the automobile when it came, when it became more of a mass production entity, it forced people to reskill. You had
hmm
mechanics who were now, uh, you know, taught how to rebuild an engine and do all these different things. You had people who really went to task on, building the roads that needed to be smoothed out. You couldn't just have these dirt roads anymore. You needed, different skills. So
That's right.
industries came from the new technology, and there was a massive effort behind reskilling people. And I'm curious if you think that organizations who are now considering, and I'm not talking about the small business people, because I'm one of
hmm
those small business people who utilizes AI for so many of our, scheduling and things like that. But
Absolutely.
when you are currently holding 500, 1,000 employees in your office, and you're wanting to introduce AI into an area that impacts people's jobs, do you think that these organizations have a responsibility to help reskill employees that are potentially being displaced?
Yeah,
Or maybe is it unrealistic? I mean, I don't know fully. This is a new thing. This is very, very new for our country. But, from
it
somebody who's
is.
behind it day after day, talking to these companies specifically about AI, what do you think about that? The reskilling of people?
Yeah, I think I mean, again, it's a fantastic question, right? And you're asking these questions that not a lot of organizations ask internally. And so the answer isn't going to be so in your face and so obvious. But when we really look at this from a power perspective, when we identify what power actually is, how do we utilize it? And we start being transparent, right? Because we can talk about all these terms, but if we don't start from the very beginning, to I have a colleague, a friend of mine, who owns another company. We're doing workshops, and he's just like, I talk about power dynamics all the time, but I always forget to identify what power actually is, right? So it's a reminder it's such a wonderful reminder about when we talk about these things. So when we talk about moral obligations from leadership, right, in organizations, I think they do have absolutely, they have a moral responsibility for it, but we have to remember that reskilling is also damage control, right, for these
Yeah.
organizations. And
Yeah.
so um,
Mm.
it's damage control for fundamentally extractive decision. The real obligation is worker ownership of AI implementation decisions, right? So, like, is there a collective veto power that employees can have to vote internally to say, do we even need an AI for this? Is an AI adoption going to amplify our job, or is it going to remove things from me so that I can focus on growth in another department? And
Right.
so I believe that there is a fundamental responsibility for organizations who adopt AI to immediately remove this thought that it's going to be a cost saver
Hmm.
and really think strategically on how they can uh, help their internal employees grow and maneuver into other positions. So, like, for example, if I'm a call center agent and we adopt an AI that handles mundane call center, conversations,
Hmm.
now I get to really get trained as a call center employee on handling bigger cases if the AI bot can't take care of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And who's to say that somebody in leadership in a call center who's been there 15, 20 years, which I've seen time and time again, they now get an opportunity to advance and move into another position. So I think AI being responsibly used, when we talk about the organizations having moral obligations, I think that's what the moral obligation looks like, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
one thing for me to say, yeah, absolutely they have one, but what does that look like in real world scenarios? And so I'm always trying to find a way to no, it's all good. I always try to find a way to fill in those gaps when we talk about those concepts.
Yeah. I think for me, one of the challenges that I have, and there's a couple of clients that I've had this conversation with recently, where instead of looking at it as a cost cutter, like how many people can we drop
Hmm.
and replace, the reskilling is one thing, but also what if it was utilized as a tool to enhance your product as opposed to just a way to save money? If there's a way that you can utilize AI to provide better customer service year round, 24/7, where an individual can call in between this time and this time, and you've got normal hours that people can actually get sleep. They can be with their families. You can have realistic working hours, and AI covers the other side.
Mm.
There's a lot of ways in which people can utilize AI that I think, like anything new, they're attracted to the shine of it, like, oh my gosh, without really getting too um, deep and understanding that there's a lot that can be done ethically. There's a
Yes,
lot that can be done, in a way that makes things better, and it's not always just about, that bottom line of savings. But
100%.
that, I mean, that's just a few of the conversations, because the people I'm talking to, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because I know, again, you're dealing with people in very competitive sectors. Is
Mm.
it, are they feeling this push because of competitive pressure, fear of being left behind, meeting a better bottom line? Like, what do you see most, like the most driver towards AI for your clients,
Yeah, it's really
or
interesting.
industry wise?
Industry wise, I would say this. I think industry, when we talk about industry wise, then we're talking about the producers of these AI platforms, right? The open
Hmm.
AIs, the Claudes, the all of these things, right? This is the industry, which is really probably about 7 to 8 massive players. And I'm hoping that my Justice AI comes into the race, not in a competitive standpoint, but to transform this industry entirely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Industry wise, I think the goal is designed to concentrate wealth upward, right? We see it with these CEOs. We see it with all the news coming out. We see it with Palantir. We see it with their OpenAI's contract with the government. For organizations, I believe that there is a sense of FOMO where they have to sign up for the latest, greatest AI in their industry.
Yeah.
And what I realize is that right from the start, this push isn't really about genuine progress. It's just to say, to your point, and using your words from earlier, is I now have the new shiny object, and so it's a there's a lot of posturing that occurs from leadership in the industry to say, oh, we use the latest and greatest AI technology, we do X, Y, and Z, and then there's this, and I'm not trying to speak in absolutes here because there's so much nuance. There are leaders who really see the beauty in AI systems and they're like, this is fantastic, this is helping, blah blah blah. But I think what I can say, in an absolute statement, is that the majority of all leadership, they don't ask the right questions from the very beginning before adoption. And so in the sales process, and I'm speaking from experience, when they come into It's amazing what they ask questions about and what they ask and what they don't ask questions for. If you're
Yeah,
talking about introducing an AI tool for your bottom dollar, there are no questions. They're like, I get to save X amount, and we may have to make some internal changes for our employees and have massive layoffs. No question, let's bring it on. But if I bring in my AI with an ethical component to it that says, I'm going to audit your AI systems, your HR documentation, your policies and procedures, and we're going to identify the biases, and we're going to mitigate your bottom dollar for billions of dollars of mitigation for potential lawsuits, then all the questions come because now we're trying to
yeah,
unveil what's under the carpet. And
yeah,
so I think there's a real huge tell when we're talking about what's really at the core of the adoption of these tools, right? And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
um, yeah, I'm not actually sure if that answered your question or not, but that's just kind of where that
Well,
took me.
and that's fine. That, you know me, that works for me all day long. I think it. You literally hinted towards where I was going with the next question about what are leaders kind of getting wrong with how they communicate
Mm,
the AI use to their employees. But I'm actually more interested in what you just said. Like, they're asking the wrong questions. Well, a good number of them are asking the wrong questions. If you, and I don't want you to, label your top 10, but what would be like the first three questions that an organization should ask, about AI when you're presenting, or let's say it's anybody's AI that's being presented to an organization, and let's do this on a large scale. You've got a big company or you're an entrepreneur. What would you say are the big three questions for those two different types?
absolutely, and that's a great question because this is where my jam comes in because I'm also owner of Mod Atlas Media, so I do a lot of
Hmm.
marketing and media work for small and large corporations. The entrepreneur or the larger company, if they're successful, automatically they understand that who they're having these conversations with have pain points, right? So you're
Yeah,
walking in the door
yeah,
understanding, hey, you have pain points and I have solutions. Let's just start there. However, does the normal entrepreneur and or the larger business come in asking, do we need an AI for this? You don't care because you want them to buy your product, right? For me, I ask the question, do you need an AI for this? Now, when it comes to bias mitigation and all of these things that I do, bias is an everyone problem, so I know you need it, and that's a different conversation. One of the question is do we need an AI for this? If you do need an AI for this, what is it going to do with your organization internally, and are you prepared for an adoption and the change that it's going to cause when you bring it onto your company? Like, what processes do you have in place? And those conversations should be had with vendors because the vendor needs to also understand that they have a responsibility in the way they impact organizations with the tools that they bring in as well. Right. So it's actually a shared responsibility of ethics when it comes to, am I offering a tool that's going to make life changing impacts for the organization from within? If all I care about is my potential client's bottom dollar, and you're not talking about the impact that it's going to have on the workers and the people within, then the vendor is equally responsible for that. So there is a lot of there are a lot of moving parts that I think a lot of people don't think about. And because we are in this golden age of rush, 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 adopt, 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 AI for everything, to your point in the very beginning, we don't think about the people. We are not asking the right questions about the people that it's impacting from within. So I think when you walk in, not only should you ask those questions as a vendor, but I think you should also have a responsible power play that you can bring in to say, maybe you have non-negotiables as a company that says, listen, you can adopt this tool and this tool is going to be great, but you have to make sure that you also have protections for your people, and this is what that
yeah,
looks like when you adopt
yeah,
the tool. And if you don't adopt these protections, we're just not going to be doing business together. And that sounds horrible to so many entrepreneurs who are like, I'm not shooting myself in the foot when I got a door in and blah, blah, blah. But really, when you position yourself with these values that center people versus profit, your organization becomes very much more respected in the grander scheme of things. And so there's a balance, and and you have to ask yourself, even as an entrepreneur or the business person in a larger company, it's what are you, and I can go into a whole tangent. All I'm going to say is, before you even come to this position, you have to ask yourself, what are your non-negotiables when it comes to your values? And do you have non-negotiables? And if you don't, fine, that's cool. Um, but you also have to think about the impact that you're having with the product that you're offering. And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
so there's a lot of things in this conversation, right? It's the perspective of the buyer, which is the major corporation and their responsibilities, but it's also the responsibility of the business person who's introducing said product to think outside the box about all of these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a muddy conversation.
It can be, and to be honest, I think it should be.
100%.
I think that people need to dig in and stop looking for the easy solution sometimes.
I agree with you 100%.
There's a question I ask when it comes to trying to automate, or when clients come to me with a question about any given new product, right? And this is not necessarily AI specific. It's just, we saw this new thing that if you do this for your email marketing and whatever it is that they're wanting to work through, I ask them the question of, do you want this product? Is it that you want this product, or that you've evaluated it and you need this product?
Mm.
And most haven't really thought, is this something we really need, or is this something that everyone else is doing, so we better get on before everybody else, passes us by?
Yes,
And I think, that might be a helpful tool when people are evaluating is AI. And again, I'm not against AI, the use of AI
for
for
sure.
your business. I think that you need to be very careful with how you onboard it, the expectations that you're setting for employees. Of course, if you're running a large company, you've got shareholders that you've got to deal with. That's one thing, but the people who make the thing run, your business run, those are human
Mm.
beings, and they're going to have feelings, and if they feel like they don't have any say whatsoever, and this is just how things are going now. You and I talked last time. You're going to lose them. You're going to lose those
100%.
people. They're going to run to the next place where they feel more secure, where they feel like they have a say. So, Christian, I know from everything that I've seen on social media that you've done, everything that we've discussed in the past, just through our conversations, the literal purpose of, or I wouldn't say the purpose, I would say the foundation of Justice AI is empathy,
Mm.
right?
100%.
Um, which, ironically, that's the foundation of this podcast. Um, my question to you is one in which I am pondering, not because I lack faith, it's just because I lack data. And data
Mm.
is a big big deal for me. The data I don't have, what I'm trying to figure out is, do you think empathy can actually survive in a system increasingly driven by efficiency and automation, or does there need to be an intentional
Yeah. This is a question.
rebuild?
Yeah. Well, first of all, that quote I need on a t-shirt. It's not that I'm lacking faith, I'm just lacking data. I think that's bars. That's fantastic. Hello.
Nice.
Uh,
TM.
Golly, that's fantastic. As soon as you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly where I'm at. Um, I think that empathy cannot survive inside our system that operates through racial capitalist logic. when I go into these rooms and have these conversations with leadership, the question always comes up, why do you always make it about race or racism or the system or the man? And I'm like, because it is. Everything ties to it, right? I mean, we had 40s post World War II, and it's aggravating. But empathy for me is one of those non-negotiables, right? And then it cannot exist truly in the system that we've adopted and we've inherited that we didn't ask for. When you get hired into an organization, the goal is protect the organization, scale the organization at the cost of your humanity. And granted, that's never said in the application process, in the interview process, but you talk to any employee anywhere and they can identify that that statement is 100% true. There is this lack of empathy that that desperately needs to be injected into these organizations. And I think that to your question, I think the answer is no. And also it needs to be intentionally rebuilt. And the problem with that is I'm a father of four, so I look at business like my children. I look at my potential clients as my adoptees. I look at my business as my kids. Uh, and I look at the way that I operate as a business owner, as a parent, and a responsible parent who fucks up sometimes. I make errors, but at the same time, I take responsibility, accountability, and I grow from it. And I have to model this behavior of what I want my businesses to be, right? This is how I think about business owners. And I think about how I want to show up for community when I bring in my adoptees, which is my clients. And so I'm always Papa in the house, and I have to model
Hmm.
this framework that realistically doesn't exist today in corporate culture, right? So when we talk about being intentionally rebuilt, I'm sure the question is going to be from a lot of your audience members or for your listeners. People are going to say, well, what the hell does that look like, right? What does intentionally being rebuilt look like? So we can
Hmm.
use these concepts, but it forces us to really think outside of the box. And I hope that this question for your listeners allows them to reflect for the moment, to take a look and say, well, what does that look like? If I was to intentionally rebuild a system that's breaking and is unsustainable, and I want to inject empathy into this framework, what does that look like? What power do I have? What abilities do I have to speak to leadership?
Hmm.
Um, you know, empathy also needs economic democracy, man, worker ownership, right? Where workers have a say, wealth redistribution to operate it within your organization. And I just truly believe that you can't perform care inside of system design to extract and expect it to matter. And this is just the unfortunate part of where we are. And so again, it's asking the right questions and having the ability to reflect on what do I, as a business owner or as somebody offering a product, what responsibilities do I have to ensure that these core fundamentals are fueling my product. And I want to come in and bring in this amount of change into all organizations. I'm going to tell you, when I developed Justice AI back in 2020, late 2023, my
Hmm.
first initial thought was I'm the byproduct of HR discrimination. I had one of the worst HR cases in the company that I quit before I started my businesses.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, and I thought to myself when I was developing this, if I had this tool when I was going through my HR case, this would have never happened. If HR had
Mm.
this tool and figured out how to maneuver my situation, I would have never been put in that situation. So I came in with this belief of like, what change can my product bring to this
Hmm.
organization? Not only for the bottom dollar benefit, but for literally making changes within the organizational structure. Like, I'm going to disrupt your industry. Am I disrupting it in the best way or in the bad way? And am I ready to have those conversations?
Yeah. Yeah. I think for a good majority of the conversations that I have with peers, I work, with other coaches, other consultants, just, we talk a little bit of shop. And some of the conversations that we are having is around what does it look like to rebuild this thing? And there are a growing number, and if I showed you my ledger, you'd see that there's a growing number of individuals who are leaving organizations that they've worked at for anywhere from a decade to longer, and saying I need to do this differently. I need to start Eddie, what does it look like to start my own nonprofit? What does it look like to start my own business? What are some of the pitfalls? What are some of the great things? And those are very real discussions, even in ministry.
For sure.
I've had a couple of clients who have left mega churches who are like, I just want to do something that feels like it's doing more. And so one of the things that they're talking about in those organizations is ethics. What does it mean to truly take care of the people that they're serving? And so building that trust, that ethical side of things, tends to, right now, just for the clients. I'm not saying this is industry wide. I don't serve the United States of America, but
Right.
the majority of people that are coming my way, that I get the DMs on social media from, the emails, the phone calls, are individuals who are like, the country seems a little wild right now. Companies seem to be just letting people go left and right. If you're a black woman, black man, you're getting dropped, literally, not for production or your ability to produce. You're just being dropped.
100%.
And they're wondering, how do we build something ourselves? And so that's been a good amount of the people having those conversations. And the biggest conversation is always about building something ethical, building something that they can be proud of, that they don't have to, kind of put their shoulders up and tell their kids, yeah, we had to do this thing that, I would never advise you to do, but we got to do now. So it's a very real thing. And with AI, like anything in technology that we've seen in this country, I'm not going to speak to other countries. In this country, it seems like there are those who are like, oh my gosh, we can help so many people with this thing. And there are those who are like, we can make so much money with this thing. And
Right. Right. Well, and
it's rough.
I want to tell you a couple of points to what you just said, right? Like when I'm able to help people understand that these major corporations, the system and the way that it's designed represent probably two handful of people in positions of power. And it is
Mm-hmm.
not a reflection of how we actually want to operate as a society. I also help people understand that this isn't an individualistic issue. This is a systemic issue in which we've inherited. So when we talk about adopting and bringing in or implementing ethics rather into your organization, how do we operationalize ethics? We have to understand how much does the system allow ethics to breathe when you think about it systemically. The limitation comes from the system that has us in a chokehold where it doesn't matter how ethical we want to be, you're going to run into such an enormous issue with the ethical standpoint. That isn't actually leadership per se, it's the conditioning that a leader has adopted in this system that oppresses, right? We have to remember that we are conditioned by the system, whether it's through racism, leadership, how we show up in debates, disputes, like all of this is conditioning. So Audre Lorde was quoted, right, in saying you can't bring down the master's house using the master's tools. And of course, she was talking about like voting power and things of that nature and politically. But with AI and these new tools, I asked the question, well, can we? Can we reformulate the system? Can we build something new with enough voices to implement empathy as a core foundation for what we're building in the future? Where maybe decolonization, and this is something that I run into every day. Maybe decolonization isn't about dismantling the system completely. Maybe it's about looking at what we have today, seeing what works, and then asking the question, well, how can we actually build something new that incorporates a lot of the good, eliminates the bad, and then how do we fill in those gaps with something brand new that we've never seen before? This is talking about literacy now, and literacy. There's a lot of key factors to get us there, but I think that, again, it's asking the right questions. And so when I'm speaking to your audience, it's like, and this is what I tell my audiences, this is what I tell everyone that I come in contact with. What questions are we asking really to get us to the next place that we want to see in society?
Don't go anywhere. The Unbroken Place will be back in just a moment. What if the clarity you've been searching for isn't out there, but already within you? I'm Eddy Paul Thomas, life and leadership coach. I work with purpose-driven people who are ready to lead boldly, live intentionally, and grow from the inside out. Whether you're at a crossroads or leveling up, coaching can help you move with focus, confidence, and wisdom. This is your time. Visit onsecondthoughtstudio.com to get started.
Looking for a way to reconnect and reset? Awaken Pittsburgh offers free guided meditations open to everyone, online and in person, on the first and third Wednesday, second Saturday, and third Monday of each month. Each session includes guided practice, reflection, and space for questions and support. No experience needed. Sign up on Eventbrite and join the community.
Imagine a place where the untold stories of Black missionaries are amplified, honored, and celebrated. A place that bridges the legacy of the people of the Way with the powerful missions work of today's African diaspora. Welcome to the Black Missions Museum, a digital project dedicated to preserving the voices, culture, and legacy of Black missionaries across the globe. But we need your help to bring this vision to life. Your support makes a difference. Join us in this mission by donating today. Just click the link in the show notes to give and be a part of history. Together, we can inspire future generations and keep the legacy alive.
In a world where thriving teams, engaged managers, and ethical leaders are the backbone of successful business, how do entrepreneurs set the stage for human flourishing while scaling up? The answer is ongoing effort, leadership, and intentional communication. At Elevate One Consulting, Dr. Erica Garcia Thomas and Eddy Paul Thomas are helping to turn the tide. With a blend of evidence-based practices, interactive teaching, and dynamic public speaking, they're not just consultants, but revolutionaries in improving company health, growth results, and employee engagement. Specializing in revitalizing brands, coaching leaders, and accelerating projects, Elevate One Consulting offers a comprehensive suite of business services designed to enhance team leadership and customer experience. Whether advising executives, guiding digital marketing strategies, or transforming organizational culture, they're here to elevate your business to the next level. Don't settle for a business that survives. Ensure that it thrives. Visit www.elevateoneconsulting.com. ELEVATE 1consulting.com today and take the first step towards creating an environment where everyone flourishes. Elevate One Consulting. Innovate, grow, elevate.
And we're back. I said it before, brother. I am so excited to see products like yours that are out there that are genuinely trying to help people work through all of these very, very difficult conversations. I think for all of the ugly that social media has brought us, we could talk for another hour on all the bad stuff that social media has brought. One of the most insightful things that I've seen, I have every once in a while I get to speak at conferences and work with youth, teenagers and younger, just in terms of how to see each other, working on biases, living experiences outside their own little shell. One of the things that I've seen is that if you happen to hit the right algorithm, you're going to get inundated with, hey, here's what really is going on in the Congo. Here are people, feet on the ground, showing you what's going on in Congo. Here's what's going on in this company. Here's what's going on in this country. Here's what's going on in this community right around your neighborhood. And you had no idea. And these kids are seeing these things. And I'm seeing that, not just the dopamine hit that they get
Yes.
from doing it. I'm seeing that empathy button being pushed, and they're starting to ask different questions that my generation did not, because we got information from like what, 5 places. and I,
Mom,
and
dad,
I,
and uncle, and grandma.
right. And CBS, NBC, ABC, and PBS, like that was it,
Yes.
So we were given this filtered story about how something is going on in a certain community, and you're like, oh, I got to stay away from there. Oh, I got to go there, based on what you saw. And that
100%.
was rarely the actual reality of what was going on. But I see a little bit of promise in what some of these tools are doing, and the willingness to ask questions that my generation wasn't, is just, it's encouraging.
It's amazing to watch as a father of 4. Like I the level of awareness that my kids have today,
Yes.
it leaves me speechless. I'm like, how did you know that? What are you listening to figure that out? I didn't teach you that. Like, holy crap.
Mm-hmm.
And I try, right? I'm trying to teach them all about these things, but
Oh yeah.
you
Yeah.
also find out where they are naturally when they start these conversations because of whatever they're consuming, and you have the ability to steer them the right direction for it. But it's very interesting. It's very, very
Yeah.
interesting, the level of awareness that they have today. And to your point, I think it's fantastic. I think that's the plus side of the information that we have access to with social media, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't lie. I love being educated by my kids every once in a while. Just they'll bring something up. Really? Well, tell me more about that. And they'll send me the source and the video, and it's great. I love seeing that they're learning something, that they're not just consuming and moving on, but they're like learning and thinking about it deeply.
Absolutely.
It gives me hope. But I do want to come back specifically to AI. And I guess I asked a question, and you've dropped some bars all along about what would be great if we could. But I guess the big question for me would be, what does ethical AI adoption look like in real operational terms? Not just mission statements and vision statements, but like operationalizing this thing. What does it look like from your point of view?
Yeah. I'm going to tell you that in doing the work that I do, I haven't found another company that has truly, there's some that are close, but they haven't truly operationalized ethics in their processes fully, right? So I'm only going to speak from my experience of what I've done. Um, I let me give a little bit of context so for listeners who have never heard or seen me before. 2023 August, I got invited to do beta testing for ChatGPT. ChatGPT 3.5. It was called Chat with 3.5. I got invited via email, had no idea how I got invited. But when I started using it on day of launch for beta testing, two things happened. I knew that it was going to change the world, that AI was going to be the new thing that isn't going to go anywhere. And I thought it was the coolest thing. But then, as a decolonial social scientist, as an activist, as a brown man who lived in the United States his whole life, in North America, who has firsthand experience with racism, discrimination, I'm neurodivergent, all of these intersectional identities that I carry, this AI had no idea who I was. So, or how to navigate my experiences, and it was giving me so much bias in its answers, and I immediately said, holy crap, this is a problem. So the next question for me was, how do I even build something that doesn't do this? Now, when you ask yourself that question, again, goes, are we asking the right questions, right? When we have these ideas, the answer was, yes, I believe that there is a way that we can do this, but what does that look like? How do you do it? And so it led me to collaborate with AI ethicists who are in the field, who have been talking about AI bias for 10 plus years. Immediately connected with Joy Buolamwini, lots of names on LinkedIn, and they were able to point me to decolonial specialists around the world who had perspectives and had things to say. And if we were going to build this in AI, this is what this looks like. And so I say all that to say that intentionality has to be the first foundational driver in building ethical tools of any capacity. You have to have intention. You have to really be intentional and think about what intention looks like. Then you have to ask yourself the questions: what does power look like in a truly ethical system? What does redistribution look like? What communities are you serving? All of these things come into play. So not only did I have to build what I called the DIA framework, which is the Decolonial Intelligence Algorithmic Framework, which is the blueprint that tells my AI systems, no matter where I build it in, that you have to operate through this framework. It's a non-negotiable framework that you have to operationalize, and it pulls from the framework itself. Then I had to collect my IP, which thankfully I had over 560 decolonial specialists from around the world
Wow.
literally gift me over 30 years of their knowledge source in their specific fields. And they had to contribute that. And if they said no, then it was no. And they said yes, it was yes. Well, then it was like, okay, well, you have to be compensated for this. Some people were like, no, I don't need any compensation. No, I don't want to be listed as publisher because I don't want the smoke, because if somebody doesn't like what I have to say and they're going to come to me and blah, 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 like, I need peace in my life. And I understand that too, from a person of the global majority perspective. You don't want to attract issues and drama. And a lot of these folks saw Trump's presidency coming a mile ahead. They knew where we were headed. They didn't want any bit of that. But I still developed the framework that for whatever amount of subscribers I have a month, you're going to get a percentage of that, whether it's 2 cents, 10 cents, $5, $10. As time progresses, money has to go back to you. Like you help build this thing through the IP. And so they were like, okay, like, sure. But again, it's, are you giving back to the communities to help you build this tool? Are you bringing people
Right.
to the table? Do they have decision-making power? I can't tell you how many weeks I've spent communicating with these individuals, and they were like, we can't put that in there, or this is not right, or this is
Yeah.
harmful language and terminology. And then we discuss all of these nuanced ideas, and we build the AI to not speak in absolutes, but give perspectives to give you a fuller picture. So it's not taking one side over the next, but it's also not sacrificing the well-being of the communities you're serving. There's so
Right.
much that goes into these things. So I say all this to say, to your question, how do you operationalize it really depends on how much you can think outside of the box in terms of the impact that you want to make in society and to the people who will have access to this tool. And so when you have all of this kind of mind mapped out on a sheet of paper or in your computer, and you're able to build out all of the nuances, then you bring people to the table outside of Western sources, right? So you have to have
Yeah.
diverse perspectives. You also
Yes.
have to have as much of a non-colonized perspective that you can have. Not all skin folk are kinfolk, right? There are a lot of there are a lot of black and brown brothers and sisters I spoke to that just to no fault of their own. I mean, this it's not their fault. They were just conditioned in this colonial way of
Yeah.
thinking, and you
Yeah.
have to make the decision to say, yeah, this isn't going to work, right? This is a perspective that is, and then you have to be ready to challenge it and have those conversations. And so this was not an easy task, just to say that. And I think that when you are talking about building tools like this in a racial capitalist system where everything is, we got to be bigger, better, faster, put out everything, and then we'll figure it out later, that
Hmm.
can't happen. You can't operate that way when you're building something like what I built with my peers. And so it's a complete mind shift. What I'm hoping to do is I'm hoping to be a model and set the standard for how we build these tools moving forward. I don't want to be the only ethical AI tool in the world. I wish that all AI was ethical. But what I
Hmm.
can say is that I've started this movement where we decolonize AI once and for all, so that those who are building these systems, they can follow my blueprint, which is all public and all live on social media and internet and
Yeah.
all of the things, because we need more of it, right? And so again, as being Papa in the room, how am I showing up for my community? How am I modeling this to show people that it's possible? It took me 3 years to get here, but I was live with my tool within 4 to 6 months, and I taught myself coding, and I taught myself um, everything that I needed to make this happen by using this very system that I'm trying to decolonize, right? So ChatGPT taught me how to code. ChatGPT taught me how to navigate all of this, how to build all of this, how to become also, dealing with my neurodivergent challenges as ADHD and dyslexic. How do you read a block of code where your brain is not malfunctioning? You know what I mean? So
Mm.
like we
Yeah.
have these
Yeah.
tools that help out so many ways. And so if I'm able to build an ethical tool with an unethical tool, which is hilarious to me when I ask it that way, uh,
Yeah.
but you also get to see that what's possible with using these tools. It's like,
Hmm.
how am I going to honestly come to you and demonize a system, a tool, uh, when I've seen the beautiful things that it can do? And it solidifies my point when I always say AI isn't the problem, capitalism is. And so until we're ready to talk about capitalism and the system itself, you can't really demonize the tool. The tool is just a tool that's being weaponized by these forces that represents a small percentage of humanity that is not the greater bit of humanity. So it's there's a lot in all of that. And I say all of that to say, not to be so long-winded, but to really AI adoption and operationalization of ethics is not easy, but it can be done. And so it
Yeah.
takes a lot of processes. It takes
Yeah.
a lot of steps.
Yeah. I think, gosh, there's so much there at what you're saying, because generally speaking, when I talk to people about different tools and different things that we experience in this country, the tools are never the real issue. It's who's wielding the tool. There are people
Yes.
who, talk about, we could talk about one of the most controversial subjects in this country, gun violence. Right. They're the people who go out hunting, with guns. There are people who use guns to literally protect themselves at home, and the only time it ever comes out is at home. And then
Yep.
there are those who go out, seeking trouble and doing all the things that are with it. But the issue isn't the gun. It's application and the systems that are in place to create negative impact. And it's like any tool that exists. And so
Couldn't agree
um
more with you.
you hit the nail on the head with it, with how nuanced some of those conversations have to be. One thing that maybe I am assuming, and I need to take a pause on,
Mm,
is the idea that maybe some of our listeners understand what decolonial means in any
mhm,
way, shape, or form.
mhm.
And maybe before we jump on to the next question, could you take a moment and just unpack for everyone what does it mean to be a decolonial technologist?
Yeah, so which is a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. Because the truth is, a lot of people have no idea what I do. They see the title "Decolonial Social Scientist" and they're like, "Well, that's a made up title," um, and I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
beautiful thing about it is, so decolonial social science. I study the world before, during, and after European colonization. European colonization is a system that we've inherited all around the world. And people say, well, that's not true because China is China and Iran is Iran is Iran and so on and so forth. But European colonialism is the foundation to every empire and how it operates today. It's also the cause of all of our harmful social biases. So, meaning how everyone sees everyone else and how we see how others look, how they live, how they love differently than we do, and how we feel about it with our biases is the byproduct of colonialism. Colonialism taught us. Let me just say this: colonization wasn't just about stealing land; it was about stealing minds. It was about conditioning minds and weaponizing patriarchy and religion to justify oppression. Which is why, oh, and you being a person of faith and what have you, you've seen it. You know the rhetoric. I'm a recovering
Oh, yeah.
Catholic myself. Oppression is weaponized within these systems when it was never meant to be. And so, what I do studying colonization is I help people connect the dots, um, how it manifests today in law, in media, how colonization manifests in our biases, and how it manifests even in our bodies somatically
Hmm.
and in our brains, how we think, and what happens when we become reactionary. So I study parts of the brain, and I understand what gets activated by how we were racialized by the system. So it's all interconnected. And so part of my job is to help people connect the dots that way so that they can understand the system that we've inherited that we didn't ask for. And it helps people deconstruct and heal from the damage that the system has actually done for us. So, that as a decolonial social scientist turned technologist, I was able to operationalize critical race theory and decolonial theory into code, which teaches teaches the AI how to behave more ethically. And so ultimately, I say this: I say, if bias in AI is the byproduct of the system of white supremacy, which I call racial empire logic, then the
Hmm.
antithesis, the solution, is decolonizing it so that you get a fuller picture and a better understanding of global perspectives versus just the Western white centric perspectives that were programmed into the AI. And so
Yeah.
that's actually the simplest solution to debiasing an AI is
Hmm.
decolonizing it. And of course, that's the reason why major AI companies don't do that is because they would have to admit that there is a colonization problem, right? And so
Yeah.
this is why we
Yeah.
are where we are. And so
Yeah.
the work that I take on is extensive, and it opens up a whirlwind of conversations for all of that. And I hope that answered the question fully because that's
Yeah.
pretty much everything that I do.
Yeah. I love it. I love the explanation that you give, because it's like a lot of industries and a lot of organizations that are seeking to change the way they do things,
Mm,
so that it does have that respect for different cultures, for different viewpoints. One of the organizations that I had come in contact with and have worked with a little bit over the last few years was working on that specifically within the missions world,
mm,
Christian missions, and they were specifically saying that there's a way to introduce someone to the stories of Jesus, the Bible, without saying, yeah, but now you've got to cut your culture. you got to change all the things you were doing in order to practice this faith. And it's like turning a lot of things on its head.
Hmm.
There are those who obviously you're messing with my power structure, and there are those who are saying, oh yeah, we are in 2026, and if we're looking at the rest of the world as we need to settle them with Jesus, it's not it is not going to work, and it shouldn't work, and that's why there's so many disruptions right now.
Mm.
But that's just one ministry that I
Course.
had come in contact with. Several other companies are looking at, kind of the power structure that you were mentioning before. How can we empower employees more? How can we make it so that our employees are super plugged in where they're here, but they're also getting balance? Like they can actually check out. They don't need to check their email when they're at home. All of those are remnants of the colonial mindset
Mm.
of, I need to be in charge of you,
Yes.
wherever you are. So it's a really important breakdown that you gave. And I appreciate you just taking a pause so that people understood what does it mean to be a decolonial technologist.
Yeah. And it's really, really important work because you get to see the system as the octopus that it is, right? The
Mhm.
system of European colonization is the head, and every arm it represents the tools that it weaponizes in our day-to-day structure, how it weaponizes media, even religion, patriarchy being just the biggest, most muscular arm, because patriarchal weaponization can be found in so many ways, and we look at colorism and so many things. And so when
Oh,
you understand,
yeah.
yeah, when you understand that all of these systems intertwine and they intersect and they're all interconnected, then you're able to find bigger and better solutions to, if you can map out, this is what I do with my clients. We map out the octopus, literally have an image of an octopus, and I tell it what oppressive structures they operate from. When they're able to see it and map out which departments are utilizing which arm, you could see their brains almost melt down. They're like, "Oh my God, I had no idea that I was
Yeah.
being patriarchal. I had no idea that I was being, uh, X, Y, and Z." And so we don't know what we don't know, right? And also, I'm not in the business of convincing people of anything they're not ready to listen to. I'm just not. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't debate oppression, but I, if I'm invited to a room, I'm going to plant as many seeds as I can, and whatever blossoms from those seeds is fine. But yeah, it becomes it's so important to understand ultimately how to map out these systems, because I think that that's where every solution lies. Is if you're able to see the problem, you're able to think outside the box and find a solution that works for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes so deep, brother. I when I talk to people and listen to clients, I hear it in beauty standards. I hear it in, what people consider as professional. Are you in professional dress? There's so many, the education, coming from another country where you are this top tier surgeon, but you move to our country and you're not the surgeon anymore. You've got to start from the bottom. And really, this person's saving hundreds of lives a year, and they come here and, well, now you got to start over. You have to do it our way, and it just
Are you kidding me,
there.
bro? Yeah.
Yeah,
Even in
there's so
even
many
in
of
my
those things.
even in my title, the decolonial social sciences, people are like, "Well, what university did you study that from?" I was like, "Well, clearly not a Western centric one. I literally am studying things outside of Western framework."
Yeah, yeah,
Even those titles get challenged, and your education gets challenged, and your identity
yeah,
gets challenged, and your lived experience gets challenged. It is so deep and so gross. Um, but you have to have the mentality and the wherewithal to be able to have these crucial conversations without it being so much. I can't believe you asked me that. I can't believe you don't know that. Most people don't know this stuff, so there's a lot of patience. There's a lot of modeling of healthy behavior, that if you're not really operating from a healthy space, an unbroken place,
Ah,
you
nice. Well
know,
done. Well done.
yeah, you're not going to get very far
Yeah. Yeah.
ultimately.
Well, Christian, I'm going to ask you to be a bit of a forecaster, and I know that we don't quite have the data for this right now, but
It's
um,
okay.
if you were to look ahead 5 to 10 years, what would you say a human-centered workplace actually looks like if AI is integrated in the right way?
Yeah. So let's use Justice AI as an example. I love this question because it really is a tool to help you map out this question, right? Like if I was to
Hmm.
develop or if I was to adopt Justice AI today, what am I getting out of it in the next 5 to 10 years? Is usually what the question I get. Imagine an organization adopts an ethical AI to, let's just say, identify biases the way I'm using it today. You're running bias audits, and through those bias audits, you get to really implement organizational structural change for the better. Then imagine what happens when an HR department uses it and they're dealing with the discrimination process, and they have this cancerous person in leadership who's cost them millions of dollars in lawsuits, and they know it, and perhaps they're the cousin to the HR manager or they're the cousin to some higher up. And I'm speaking from experience from mine. Um, and you have an AI tool that says you've got to get rid of the cancer. I've identified the cancer. Let's remove the tumor. It's gonna save you so much more money in the long run if it's just about your bottom dollar. But also removing this person is going to change the culture from within the organization because now people can breathe. Now they don't have a cancerous employee who's causing all the
Yeah.
harm. We have to be willing to call those people out. Think about an HR professional who uses this tool and now they know actually how to navigate. It's a white HR person talking to an African American or Indian or Nigerian person who's dealing with a racial discrimination case in the workplace. Now you have the tool to help you put steps together to really mitigate it properly. HR is meant to protect the organization, and if that's the case, it should also protect people, which it's not doing today. But what if an AI was able to say, you know what, if you don't handle this, you are potentially looking at, based off of your laws in your state or federal laws, you're potentially looking at X amount of millions of dollars in a lawsuit. And also, if you don't handle this, because this is the work that I'm doing now, we're identifying financial impacts through biased implications. If you don't do this, you're also giving a message to your employees that you just don't care about your employees. So the morale's going down, your attrition's going up because people are quitting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jasmine got fired last week and they didn't do anything about it, and it was totally dirty and the whole department knows about it. Guess what? 7 people just quit, and that's costing you now $150,000 per employee to replace them. And so we're talking, if it's about your bottom dollar, it also has to be about people. What happens if you have an AI in marketing, right? Justice AI in marketing, where you're putting out, the goal is to put out a quota of 140 posts for the month of March. Well, how much bias is in that language that you're putting out? Are you speaking to a diverse audience? Are you trying to market to a specific group of people? Are you excluding an entire race of people that can contribute to more millions of dollars if it's about your bottom dollar, just through the language that you're using, right? So organizations don't know to look at the impact of bias and how much it's actually costing them if it's about the bottom dollar. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
for me, I want organizations to succeed, especially if they have healthy cultures, especially if they have healthy messaging. You have Ben and Jerry's, you have all of these organizations who do well for the community, but it's performative if your internal core and the people inside your organization are not being taken care of, right? So this is really filling a gap. When we talk about bringing in an ethical tool like this, you're filling in all of the gaps where even if you're a CEO or a board member and ethics is at the forefront of you, but you don't know how to do this properly. For the first time ever in the history of life, we now have a tool that literally gives you the language, literally maps it all out for you. And again, not a tech bro, but how the hell can I shit on AI when these are the real things that can be done by bringing a tool like this? So
Right.
I stand by
Right.
it 1,000,000%.
Yeah. Yeah. So Christian, let me say this. I know personally that I have benefited greatly from the use of Justice AI over the last year. Just in terms of checking my own biases, it's helped me with not only approaching clients that I may see things differently from in a better way, and it's helped my approach. It helped me with the questions I ask, better questions to ask people. It's also helped with even trying to meet my daughters where they are, their needs, asking better questions, and being more curious there. But I know that there have been some updates and some things that you've been working on with Justice AI. We're going to make sure that all of the information is in the show notes, folks, for you to find Justice AI, because there's a new version that Christian is going to tell you about in a second. But just it is a life-changing tool that you really need to seriously jump on and at least give a shot. Give it a chance, and you'll see some of the things that it can do. And Christian, I appreciate you and the 500 plus individuals who have gone into making this thing a reality. The Forbes magazine that I saw not too long ago, that bro, that was very cool. I'll put that up in the show. But I
Thank
just
you.
appreciate the time. I appreciate what you're doing.
Of
This
course.
is something that will have a legacy, brother, and I appreciate you.
Thank you, man. Yeah, the Justice AI, I still have it on ChatGPT. That was
Okay.
my MVP model that I developed because I needed something to say to myself first was, can this be done? Can this be built? And if it can, what does it look like? And when I built it on ChatGPT, I also had a product that people could access, as you have, but I also had something to show organizations to say, check this out. This is what this can do. Now, because of the 5.2 update, they put in extra guardrails to really take two sides to a lot of oppressive issues. And so there's a lot of colonial bias that seeps into even the decolonial ChatGPT, Justice AI version, just because they hyperpumped it with all these guardrails. So it was still overly colonizing a lot of the responses, and you still had to argue with it. So I had to really think quickly and build it outside of the colonial architecture within OpenAI. And so I finally built it on its own platform at justiceaigpt.com, where I'm hosting it myself. I'm doing all the things and training the model every day. So it's only getting better and better and better. And
That's
so,
great.
yeah, I appreciate the shout out and I welcome everybody to try it. And just remember that whether you're an individual who struggles with understanding bias in general, you don't think that it's a big issue. And then one day you realize my biases cost me my relationship to my daughter. My biases cost me my job. My biases cost me X, Y, and Z. You now have a tool to help you navigate that, and one that's not going to shame you, right? It carries empathy, so it literally walks you through without making you feel lesser. And whether you're an organization who wants to bring it on to conduct bias audits to see what bias is costing you and your bottom dollar, and how to transform your organizational culture from what it is to something that's truly equitable, ethical, and inclusive. I couldn't be more proud of the work that we're doing with this tool because it's literally changing the world, one person at a time, one organization at a time. And I see the next 10 years being unbelievably exquisite with the impact of this tool and this movement. So I'm just I'm riding the waves, man. I'm just here for the long haul.
Outstanding. The Unbroken Place podcast is presented by Eddy Paul Thomas, LLC, and sponsored by Elevate One Consulting and OK on Second Thought Coaching. The show is produced by Say Something Studios. Learn more about our sponsors and producer in the show notes. The show's music is performed by Kesta. Thank you for being a part of the Unbroken Place podcast community. Look for an ongoing conversation on TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. And make sure to sign up for our newsletter called Things I'm Rethinking at eddypaulthomas.com. Until next time, one love.